Oh, it's so nice to finally get out and talk to people who take wine really seriously. And is that
Chilly.
Are you cold, or why have you got so many layers on?
Feeling a little chilly?
Oh, chilly.
That's the level of
I
humour.
think I left the oven on. I've got to
Tonight on the Online Wine Tasting Club, we hear about how to put together a successful business plan.
If I have to lose money, I prefer to lose money with style, making wine. So here we are.
We discover the sad story behind these beautiful lights. And we find out what's going to this bloke's head this week. It's time to explore a seriously cool country with the Discover series, Wines of Chile.
Well, a very good evening to everybody, and welcome to the Online Wine Tasting Club. There's a rumour out there that 2 shirts are better than 1, so we have a wonderful guest presenter. We've got Lee, Wineman147, all wonderful things, poor decisions, the man who works and runs the internet of wine when we're not running it. So he's here, a bit of an expert in the world of Chile, so he's here to help us out for all things that me and Alex don't know. But yeah, lots of fun today. Tour of Chile. We've got a new feature today. A lot of people have talked to us about, what our tasting notes are. But today, we want to know what your tasting notes are. And Alex will give you the lowdown of what we need to do if you want to join in and play with us today.
Well, it's right underneath me, just about here, this bit, which says, if you can grab a phone or a tablet that you're not using, if you go to that polyv.com/TOWTC, as in the Online Wine Tasting Club. It's a really catchy name, isn't it? We should have done it. But yeah, Tautka.
That's a hashtag.
Yeah, it's a good hashtag. So if you pop that into there, then what you can do is we'll be gathering your views. You just enter any words that come to mind when you're tasting the wines tonight. It'll start off for wine 1, then we'll move it on to wine 2. And that's also where you can answer silly things like Jamie's quiz and tell us what your favourite wines are as the evening goes on. So we hope this works. It's a bit of an experiment for now. But yeah, we're going to go on a bit of a tour of Chile, and as is traditional, we have a little video lined up.
But we should probably, before we do any videos, we should probably
drink some
get
wine.
some wine in the glass. So what we're going to do, absolutely, let's get pouring. So we've got 2 wines, and if you want to, get wine 1 and 2 in the glasses if you fancy doing that. We're going to come back to the studio and talk about them a little bit, but so I wouldn't down them unless you're that thirsty, and that's absolutely fine. Do what you like. But we're going to have our wine number 1 is a blend. So we've got a little bit of Sauvignon, a little Chardonnay together, and then wine number 2 is from a really cool, interesting region that you probably wouldn't expect to get any grapes from, and that's 100% Sauvignon Blanc. But we'll talk a little bit more about the wines when we pop back to the studio. But always get in the chat, ask your questions, let us know what you think. But let's have a video.
Let's have a video. Off we go.
Chile, or should I say Chile? We may end up using these somewhat interchangeably over this tasting, but however you pronounce it, this is a startlingly beautiful country, defined by 2 vast borders, the Pacific Ocean and the Andes Mountains. Formed by incredible geological forces, it has some of the widest extremes on this planet, and in turn, these have created some of the most captivating and unusual sights around. From the azure lakes, vast granite columns and towering grey glaciers of Torres del Paine, the swirling blues and greens of the solid marble caves at Cavernas de Mármol, the geyser fields of El Tacio, and the otherworldly surface of Valle de la Luna, or the Valley of the Moon. And then there are the more familiar but equally beautiful sights like the Conguillo National Park, the Niagara-esque Laja Falls, and the pristine Chilean Lake District. Now, you may have some image in your mind of Andean villages, native people wearing intricate ponchos, In fact, Chile has evidence of human civilization as far back as 18,500 years ago. But Chile is one of the most advanced and economically stable countries in the whole of South America. Now, on our earlier tastings, we have previously visited Portugal and New Zealand, countries that share Chile's distinctive shape that is long and thin north to south. And we've talked about how the way it traverses different latitudes lets those countries experience real differences in climate, which in turn help them produce brilliant and dramatic wines. But Chile takes this to a completely different level. But while Portugal is around 300 miles from north to south, Chile is nearly 3,000 miles. Now, bear with me because latitudes are measured in degrees from the equator. 0 is the equator and 90 is the North or South Pole. The difference between the Outer Hebrides, 57.8, and Cornwall, 50.3, is 7.5 degrees. And we all know that there's quite a difference between those two. Well, Chile goes from 17 to 56 degrees, and that's the difference between the Outer Hebrides and Saudi Arabia. In fact, it covers more than 43% of the whole of the Southern Hemisphere's range. This is a totally different game. And of course, it's not just the latitude which helps create these extremes, it's the height. Chile ranges from sea level to nearly 7 kilometers high. That's 80% of the way up Mount Everest. This is Hoyos del Salado, the world's highest volcano. Because of all these factors, Chile finds itself home to the world's driest place, the Atacama Desert, to polar ice caps, passing through Mediterranean, subtropical regions, and pretty much everything in between. This is the epic, full orchestral version of climate differences, with a cherry on top. The geological forces that created Chile are of course tectonic, with 3 different plates coming together. The country itself sits on the South American plate. The Nazca plate under the Eastern Pacific is constantly being forced underneath, creating the Peru-Chile Trench in the ocean and the vast mountains of the Andes on the land. However, the Antarctic plate sits just to the south, which complicates things. The Chilean triple junction is right at this point where all 3 plates come together and the interactions get tricky. The plates slide past each other at very shallow angles, which means lots of big mountains, volcanoes, and serious potential for earthquakes. This is a land of constant change. So that's all very well, but what does that mean for wine? Well, when you have a dramatic country, wines often tend to be similarly dramatic. Here the glaciers have carved out beautiful wide valleys, and it's in these that we find many of Chile's best wine regions. Now there is another thing about the climate before we move on, and it's something we've talked about before, the idea of a rain shadow. Here's a very quick recap. As the wet air comes in from the ocean and meets a mountain range, it drops all of its water on the way up, creating lush, green landscapes, but leaving the other side completely barren and scorched. Don't worry, we'll put all of this together in a couple of minutes as we go on a quick tour of the country. But first, let's talk about the story of Chilean wine. Of course, it was the Spanish conquistadors who brought grape cuttings with them in the 16th century, ostensibly so the missionaries could drink lots and lots of communion wine. Anyway, some of the first grapes mentioned were Moscatel, Torontel and Pais. The grapes thrived. So much so, in fact, that the Spanish began to fear they were not going to be able to sell as much of their own wine to South America as they had planned. So, in the 17th century, they tried to ban the planting of new vineyards. This did not work. By the 18th century, Chile was already known for plentiful, cheap wine. In the 19th century, however, some of the increasingly wealthy wine estate owners started travelling and getting a taste for the good stuff. Accordingly, they started looking to improve their own offerings. Now, at the same time, coincidentally, a Frenchman managed to persuade the Chilean government to develop an experimental nursery of all sorts of species of plants, including many different kinds of European vines. This was incredibly fortuitous timing, as the rest of the world started to be hit by an export going in the other direction. Yes, phylloxera, a bug from the Americas, started decimating vineyards all around the world, and at the same time terrible mildew infections started to rub salt in the wound. It was a catastrophe. But, thanks to the Chilean nursery, Wines that came close to extinction were saved. And because of the soils and the unique climate, Chile stayed phylloxera free and remains so to this date. The soil was just too dry, and that meant the wine industry thrived. At the time, it was one of the only healthy wine industries in the whole world, and was the only place that some of these grapes could be found. Because of the lack of phylloxera, it's also one of the very few places where you can find these grapes on their own roots, rather than grafted or stuck onto a totally different kind of plant. And that is unique. Well, apart from a few tiny places like the Canaries and Alex's garden, where he's risked a few native-rooted Chardonnay and Pinot Noir vines. However, that is unlikely to trouble the world's largest parts of the wine industry. Sadly, until the late 1980s, the focus remained on quantity, not quality. Demand plummeted and wine prices crashed. This is a common story, but half of all Chile's vineyards ended up getting pulled up. Chile needed a reinvention, and it came from the French, as they planted out more than 25,000 acres of new vineyards with French grapes like Cabernet, Merlot and Carmenere. Travelling winemakers came across to sort out how they were grown. From a haphazard set of training techniques, a much more methodical method came about, and people started exploring the potential of some of the more extreme and less easy vineyard sites, including going up to 2,000 metres high. Suddenly, the world started to notice. By the late 1980s, their Argentinian neighbours were starting to get a touch jealous of their new reputation, and copied their techniques by bringing in the experts. And of course, they have not done badly either, somewhat leaving Chile in their shadow in recent years. But while we adore Argentinian wines, we thought it was high time to look into Chilean wines. What makes them so special and elegant? Winemakers tend to talk of a sweet spot in terms of the latitude for making wine, and this works out somewhere near the middle of Chile. And sure enough, that is where we find most of the vineyards around the capital, Santiago. Here you will find the most well-known regions, well represented in your local supermarket, places like Maipo and Colchagua. This is very close to Argentina's Mendoza in distance, but vastly different in terms of climate. Here in the Central Valley region we find robust grapes like Syrah, Pais, Carmenere and Bordeaux blends of Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. But get inland and go to the north and you'll find subtler grapes like Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir, enjoying cooler influences from the ocean. And of course, the further north you move, you end up getting hotter, higher and drier. This ultimately ends up in the Atacama Desert, which can even make Pedro Ximénez, famous in Jerez or sherry, one of the sweetest styles of wine around. Go in the other direction and things start to cool down dramatically as you get closer to the South Pole. Glaciers, Arctic tundra, all the things you would not expect to see anywhere near grapes, let alone delicious ones. The South and Austral regions are quite hard to define, but have grapes that go all the way from Syrah to Muscat d'Alexandria, which is also known as Zubiba. There is a lot going on here. So overall the message is that Chile is astonishingly diverse, but very hard to categorise. So, as is now traditional, we decided to go on a little virtual tour, exploring some of these cool places, how the international grapes work when on their own routes, and also what you can expect from other interesting, less common grapes and blends. Tonight, we start off by comparing a wine made in that sweet spot in the middle of the country to one made near the Atacama Desert. That should be interesting. We then compare two reds by visiting the Etata Valley in the south and the higher parts of the Central Valley region before finishing off in the Maule Valley. So first of all, Central Valleys. The amusingly named Clos de l'Olol is deep in the middle of this textbook example of one of the best places to grow wine. The latitude is perfect, the climate's perfect, the soil is perfect, and it's all watered by crystal clear glacial meltwater. It's hot and dry in the day, but it's cooled at night by the oceanic breeze. And here we find a wine made by Francois Lurton, and it's a blend of Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc, not something you see every day. Going up against this is something very different, made near the Atacama Desert. 100% Sauvignon Blanc. This is a fascinating wine, made in scorched earth, in the shadow of glaciers. This is not Marlborough in New Zealand, and it's made by Felipe Tosso, very slowly and carefully. So, one thing to it, let's go back to the studio and see what everybody thinks.
So, welcome back. As you can see, it's very, very tough for us to have picked 5 wines to look at such a length and breadth of style. Everything you've got going on. We've got deserts, we've got mountains, we've got coasts, we've got glaciers, we've got everything in between. And within each of those little microclimates, you've got a little bit different. So it's absolutely amazing that, we've got 2 wines here that are Sauvignon Blanc based, and I don't think they could be more different. So what we'll do is we'll start talking about wine number 1. We're not going to give tasting notes to start with, because we look at everybody else's tasting notes.
Yeah, shall we have a look and see
great
what
idea.
people are doing? I can't
So
remember.
if we can
Let's bring it up. Lots of gooseberry on wine one.
lots
yeah.
of gooseberry.
Or are they pointing me out like I'm the gooseberry clearly here in between the two
or
of
is
you?
it colours on the shirts? I'm not sure. It could be anything.
Could be.
But what people are putting in their tasting notes for wine number 1, I know there's a little bit of history. It's a family from Bordeaux, but what do we know about the Cluster Lol?
Well,
Lol.
close to Lolol. Firstly, it's absolutely hilarious. It sits just below Cloda OMG,
And
above Cloda Ruffle, I believe. Which is that's Alex's joke. I can't claim. I'd love to claim that, but you can tell it's not mine because it's quite funny. But one of the things that really interests me about Chile is, particularly when we talk about South America and Argentina, people get really excited about Argentina, and people get really excited about South Africa and various other places, and often Chile, in a wider consumer base, sort of lacks a bit of excitement. People go, Chile wine, it's good, but it's just sort of solid and reliable, it's not necessarily exciting. And I think that's where, Chile needs to step forward and explain to us why it's exciting. But this is, so it's the Lurton family, Francois Lurton. The Lurtons, but they're a bit like the Corleones of Bordeaux, but with fewer horse heads and a lot more wine, and a lot less aggression. They're huge, they've got land everywhere and own very established and reputable chateaux. And they were one of the first families that came over to Chile. So in the mid-80s, when Chile discovered democracy, yay for Chile, we like that. Those barriers open and there's foreign investment, and Miguel Torres comes in really famously and goes, have you guys heard of stainless steel? And the Chileans went, ¿qué? I think that's Spanish, isn't it? Maybe it's Portuguese. I don't know. No, ¿qué? And so there's all this advancement.
That's what they said.
That's what they said, exactly. Even they didn't know what language it was, but they went, we've seen this and we said, ¿qué? So the Lurtons were one of the first families in, so they've been in Chile from sort of like 1992, and I think that says a lot about the potential of Chile, in that you've got this historic family from Bordeaux, arguably the world's greatest wine region. It's actually Barolo, but arguably the world's greatest wine region, going, we're going to go over there because it's really exciting. So they were there in 92, and it took them about 8 years. They looked around and said, we want the perfect site. What the perfect site looks like to individual producers, who knows? But these guys find this site, which is Clos de Lolol, so you're about 2 hours southwest, got the clock wrong, southwest of Santiago, the capital, 40 clicks from the ocean. So the key thing here is we think about Chile and we go, it's hot, it's South America. It's got a much more moderate climate, as you'll have seen in the presentation there. So being so close to the coast, that fruit takes longer to grow. It's a much more, dare I say, European style of fruit. So it's more about the structure, bringing out the acidity, building thicker skins to get more interesting character. So they sort of established in 2000, they've got 28 hectares, but also completely organic and biodynamic. Now, whatever you think about biodynamics, the principle's really good, right? It's quite easy to be biodynamic and organic in Chile because there's so little disease. And because you're so close to the coast, you've got coastal breezes, it blows any disease away. So they planted there, and they planted, Sauvignon, Chardonnay, and, various other varieties. And this is what's exciting about Chile for me. Chile's often accused of being like a copyist. So people go, well, Chile doesn't have its own identity, they copy what the French do or what the Spanish do. Well, there's nowhere in France that you would find a blend. This is 70% Sauvignon Blanc, 30% Chardonnay. There's nowhere in Europe would do that. This is their own thing, and let's blend these two together. And I think there was gooseberries, I can see light cheese coming in.
We don't need to work on our tasting notes anymore, but
No.
thank you for doing all the hard work for us at home.
Yeah.
I say this tastes of light cheese, apricot, it's got a creaminess
What else
about
was
it.
there?
Bit of peach, bit of gooseberry, wine, and definitely wine. There's wine in there.
There's
That's
wine.
good, yeah.
It is. I don't know much about wine, but I can assure you this is wine.
This is definitely wine. Now,
You've got that creamy side from the Chardonnay as well.
Okay, you can read as well.
But-
Well done. Well done.
It's because when I heard that you were going to do this one, I'm like, is that going to work together? That doesn't sound very sensible.
The thing is,
It's delicious.
I know we're saying it's its own kind of thing, but it's not a million miles from what they would do in Bordeaux as well. And I know it's with Semillon, but you've got that the acidity from the Sauvignon, and then you've got that richness from the Chardonnay to bring the two
100%.
together.
And let's be honest, we all like a Semillon. Now, what I like about this is it's. I remember talking to a Bordelais producer once, and he said Sauvignon Blanc is like this in the mouth, and he did this specific thing. I think he was channeling his chakras or something. I'd switched off, but he's saying that Sauvignon Blanc enters the mouth, and it's big and racy and acidity, and it sort of does this. And I was going, that's quite flowery for me to do that, but he's got me doing it. Look at it.
There you go.
Says the man wearing a flowery shirt. But he said then you've got Semillon.
Not as flowery as me.
Not as like that, because that is actual flowers, isn't it? But this is the Carmenere Panda. What Semillon does is it does the opposite. It sort of flattens out, and you get that fatness and texture in it. And that's what the Chardonnay's doing here. So it's nice in that I feel this wine is all together, but you get, there's Sauvignon and there's Chardonnay. They're bringing their different characters to the blend. And you just don't really see stuff like this anywhere else. I think it's quite a unique wine.
I've got some bad news.
I know.
I've drunk all mine.
I've drunk mine as
So
well.
I'm going to talk about the other one.
Shall we move on to the next slide?
Because
This now is what you think of wine number 2, and these two wines couldn't be more different. And there's a
Well, they could be if one was a red.
if it was still, I think it would be.
One could be
still.
a
and
gin.
it's still, one could be a beer.
Then it would be different.
So
Now,
there we go.
Atacama's quite a sort of volcanic region, isn't it? It's got a lot of sort of sulphur going on, so I'm getting a slightly sort of sulphurous smell, but it's
Don't be giving the taste. We're waiting for the tasting notes.
waiting for
okay?
sulphur to
Grass,
appear
grassy,
there.
grass.
Yeah.
Like that.
Sticks, grassy, stivix.
So-
Someone's on wine 5 already.
What's interesting because you're so far north here with this. When we talk about soils, here's the nerdy stuff. I don't know which one of you is the bigger nerd. I'm not entirely
It's a
sure.
good question.
We should have a nerd off.
we nerd about
Me.
different things. I
What's
think
the pH of it?
So, before we dive into soil structure and all that, should we give a once over as to who the winery is and what we're drinking and why
Yeah,
it is?
that's a good idea.
That's a very good idea.
Before everyone's gone home and turned off and gone, I'm done with these guys. So we're doing Vina Ventisquera. Absolutely fantastic winery. I've worked with them in a few different places recently, and really, really fun stuff. You know, they first planted in 1998, and they've got little holdings all over Chile. They make bits and pieces all over, and it was 2008 that they planted this particular vineyard in the Huesca Valley. My pronunciation
Bless
is
you.
delightful. Bloody hell. You're not coming back. I make the stupid joke.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Thought we'd signed off on that.
Yeah, sorry.
Apparently not.
I was allowed one. That was my one.
Wasted. But anyway, so this was planted in 2008, and it's up in the Atacama Desert. And this is the driest place on earth. They have, some years they have no rain at all, and top rain is about 10 millimetres a year. It's absolutely nothing. So you would expect what to grow there? Absolutely nothing. And it's very, very dry, lots of salinity in the soil, but they went ahead and planted there. And, it's a winemaker called Felipe Tosa, who's the winemaker there, but they got a little bit of inspiration from John Duval, who we've done a couple of tasting bits with recently, but it just shouldn't grow there. It's absolutely mental. And, when they were first planting things, they'd irrigate the vines a little bit, and everything would die, because that little bit of water would get such high salinity that the vines could survive. So what they've literally got to do is flood the valley to keep the salinity in the water low enough so it doesn't become an ocean. And then the vines can then pull off that throughout the year. But this is like no other Sauvignon I've ever had. And I think Sauvignon is a great grape because it's one grape that wherever you grow, regardless of winemaking technique, sod, oak and stainless steel or any kind of thing like that, if you do a Sauvignon Blanc just on stainless steel, nice and easy, in the Loire Valley, in New Zealand, in Chile, in South Africa, in California, they are all vastly different. And this is like no Sauvignon Blanc I've ever had or probably will ever have, unless we do a side-by-side tasting from the Atacama Valley. But it's got this very, very vegetable note. It's got this green bell pepper. What else we got? We've got lime.
Lime,
We've got
yeah.
feet.
Not my feet. I can guarantee you. I wish my
better
feet
than that.
smelled this good.
Okay, we've got feet and toe jam.
Toe Jam, that was Eddie Vedder, wasn't it? Oh, it was Pearl Jam, sorry. So,
Space Jam.
little
No,
musical.
that was
Space Jam.
my Space Jam.
I hope you're enjoying this. This is quite fun. Actually.
Well, I was just
Make it.
thinking, there was that song, wasn't it? It was big in the 70s, and it was Atacama. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. And it's
But just Sauvignon Blanc now.
Just Sauvignon-
Atacama,
but-
what is it good for?
but-
Growing delicious
growing,
Sauvignon.
but then that's really hard to get into the song, isn't it? So we'll give that a rewrite. But what I love about that, so I said, oh, Chile's not that exciting. What?
Yeah.
You see that desert there? Yeah, we're going to go and plant vines. Nah, you're not. Yeah, we are. What do you have to do? We have to flood it. Yeah, you're not going to do that. Yeah, we are.
While you talk on this, I'm going to have a quick
Phenomenal.
look in on the chat and make sure we've not missed anything.
That's
Probably a
excellent.
good idea, isn't it?
I think there's one other place that's growing, lots of stuff in the desert, and that's actually in Israel, the Negev Desert. They're doing some really cool projects there, and they're probably sort of one of the big world leaders at trying to sort of reclaim the desert and do this stuff. And I'd be fascinated to know how different these things are, because I doubt they have the same salinity or the salt that goes into this. But we were talking a little bit about, like, you said Sauvignon.
I'm interrupting you now.
Yeah, go
Continue
on.
what you're saying. Food pairings. Everyone wants to know the food
Yeah,
pairings.
food pairings, yep, okay.
I would eat food with this.
And that's why we pay you the big bucks.
Exactly where I'd go.
But not pears. I wouldn't pair it with pears. So my food
Pears?
pairing.
Well, pears,
Maybe not.
a pair of pears, maybe, or just one giant pear that you could see from, but like give it to me like a pear cider that's made from 100% pear. To make a cider from one pear must be a massive. But we're not here talking
James
about
and the
cider.
giant pear.
James and
Yes,
the giant pear. With this, because it's so you normally want to go Sauvignon Blanc
That's
and
it.
shellfish.
I've realised going forward, less is more definitely.
Less.
So I don't know, something with peach. I think this would work with like a really nice meaty white fish, like a piece of I don't know, sea bass, or like wrapped in pancetta, a bit of asparagus served with it. That's quite a complex food. I don't cook food. In fact, I don't cook food. I don't cook food anywhere near anything like that at home. But that was the first dish that jumped into my head.
I kind of think this could cope with a bit of spice as well, actually. I was going to go, I'm with you on the fish, but I was thinking like fish tacos. A bit of coriander, a bit of spice in there.
Oh, a bit of carrot, isn't there? Yeah.
When you say fish tacos, you should bring fish tacos.
Yeah,
Very good point.
Rude. You're a guest, and that's rude, isn't it?
That is, well, I feel
I'm going to
utterly hard
turn
done by.
those off. And that was great fun.
Is
Really
that
enjoyed
going to come back to us? Because we're looking at
I think,
the flags.
if we... But yeah, it's been. I think there's some. With the first one, it's a much more classic thing. When you go with that sort of Bordeaux style, that gives you some quite. I don't know. What would you do with that one then?
I'd drink it.
It's very
I'd
drinkable,
just
isn't it?
Smash
Yeah,
it.
wine number one is just quaffable, sit outside, have it nicely, just get on with it. Wine number two, bit more complexity, a little bit more to think about.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit of food. Yeah, fish tacos.
Yeah, fish tacos.
But anyway,
Awesome.
that is the whites. And what's great is, you looked at the tasting notes, and let us know in the chat if you thought that was a bit of fun and if we should continue doing things like that, because I thought it was a lot of fun, and then I was able to read everyone else's tasting
Well, it's great. I
notes.
didn't have to do my own.
Exactly.
I don't like doing those. So
Yeah.
We should get on to the wine news, because there's been a lot going on this week. And in particular, I think the first thing to say is that we've all been aware that it's turned a little bit chilly in this country.
Chili, see what he did there?
yeah, that's I've got a.
Yeah. I thought I'd got that one out of the system, but apparently not. But yeah, what's happened in France is particularly devastating. But the northern parts of France often get a bit of frost.
Bit of frost, bit of cold, and they're usually kitted out
They're
to
kitted
deal
out.
with it.
What you'll see in places like Chablis is that they actually have water pipes running through the vineyard. They don't need the water to irrigate the vines. They freeze the vines covered in water. That sounds completely stupid, doesn't
Sounds
it?
counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Counterintuitive, yeah. Let's turn all of our vines into giant icicles. But actually what's happening is as the water freezes, the vine inside isn't freezing. The heat's coming out of the water, and that then actually warms it up slightly inside. And so it looks completely mad. We've got a few pictures actually from France, but this has gone down as far as northern Spain. In fact, even sort of middle of Italy's been hit, but they're sort of talking losses of sort of 60 to 80% of all of the grapes.
I was I got some interesting information from Matt Walls, who's a Rhone expert, and he was saying as far as the southern Rhone, there are some growers who've experienced 90% crop loss. There's some very small growers down there. That's it for them now.
Wow.
But it's just when you grow grapes, you put everything into it. You do this because you love it. You don't do this job for the money. I'm not appearing here for the money. Let's be honest. You do it for the love of it.
That's good to know.
It's good.
Well, you can come back then.
Brilliant. I'll see you next week. You do it because you love it, and growing grapes to make wine. It's not a 9 to 5 job. You don't just plant a few vines and come back and harvest them. You put every blood, sweat, and tears into it. I know. One of the producers down in English Wine Market, All Angels. The investment that you have to put into it to save this crop is vast. It's really sad times.
You saw all the pictures in that. I might show it again because it's quite dramatic. But what you see, there's Chablis on the right side where it's all completely frozen. But that's okay. But it's here. That's northern Spain.
Looks like a druid's night out,
It
doesn't
really
it?
does. It does.
So interesting from an
People got their cigarette
economic
lights in the air.
from an economic perspective. Each one of those pots is €8 to €9.
Yeah.
And
you've got
there's a lot of
thousands.
those there.
Yeah.
That's
It's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. And other people like bales of hay. And I saw one Burgundy producer was going to the extreme of actually bringing in the attack helicopters. Not to shoot the frost, you can't do that. We're not in America, but, you know.
Wow.
But actually what happens is that the warmer air is above. So with your helicopter, the big fan shoves all of that hot air down and tries to protect the vineyard.
I know an
and
English
really
producer did that,
pisses
yeah.
off the locals.
So, if you're losing all your crop and you need to make a bit of money, you could invest in a Ponzi scheme.
A Ponzi scheme. I
So
see what you've done there.
someone has got involved in a Ponzi scheme, and it would be our friends at Champagne Bollinger.
Yeah.
So as Champagne slowly tries to take over the world with lots of plantings in England and houses in Australia and California, Bollinger in the last week or so have bought Ponzi, which is an absolutely phenomenal Pinot Noir house up in Oregon in the Willamette Valley. So that's
Pretty cool.
That's all I've got for that. It's not
pretty
a
cool.
long term. Is that all the news there was this week?
I think so.
I don't think anything else happened, did
So,
it? No?
Not sure.
Nothing that I can... Probably just move on.
yeah.
Let's move.
Why
No,
not?
No, nothing
we have to take this moment. So this guy over here has done all right for himself, and every
Not
year
well enough to get a shirt.
not well enough to show, but every year the International Wine and Spirits Competition run this prize to try to find who is the next big thing in wine, and this is they're calling the Emerging Talent Prize. It's been won by some really really top notch people, and Jamie was the winner this year, and we're all immensely proud of him. So much so that I'm about to Mike Wazowski him. Oh no, he's moved!
Oh no!
Shall I come back? Is that better?
That's better.
That's
You just
better.
keep that there for the rest of the...
I'll keep it
Ideally
there,
put it
yeah.
in the middle. That would
But
be...
This is against some amazing people. We've got brilliant English winemakers. We've got people who've done amazing things about sort of getting women and minorities into the scheme, and they've done incredible work. And it's just brilliant seeing you being recognised for what has been pretty much a sort of 20 hours a day job for the last year.
It's been fun, but it's and when I got the nomination, I'm like, just to be nominated to be in like 6 people like worldwide to be involved in this. But the other people who are nominated, you've got people, young winemakers who are doing fantastic things, and it was a toss up. If anybody else had won it, I would have been extremely happy for them as well. And
And to get the shortlisting was amazing.
yeah, to get shortlisted was amazing, but to win it was absolutely phenomenal. Because things like that, I think I won it because of my stupid questions. That's what it's all about. So should we do it? Should we do a ridiculous question?
We should. So, Dan, this is over to you to put the next slide up, and I will pop this
Love
one
your
up
Chris
as well.
Whitty impression. It's really good.
Yeah.
So-
right.
The question being, because if I say how many crews are there in Beaujolais, you'll all Google it. I love you dearly, and I trust you implicitly, but I know people are very, very good at Googling. Once again, no prizes, it's just for fun. But we all know about Easter Island and those massive heads on Easter Island. But if we worked out that each head was worth however much an average Chilean person is in height, so a head might be 3.5 or 6 or whatever it is Chilean people in height, and we had to give these heads enough wine to get through the year, drinking on the rate that an average person in Chile drinks. So average size against average intake of wine per year, how many barrels of wine would we have to send? And by barrels, I mean standard barrel, 225 litres?
Yep.
There's not a Hercules or anything silly like that, just like this up here. How many of those barrels would we need to send to Easter Island to keep all the Easter Island statues? Well, he says
And you've got
happy.
20 seconds.
I say well drunk.
Well drunk.
20 seconds to get that in. As we do that, we should probably get wine number 3 in a glass
Yeah.
because we've talked a lot.
And mine's 3 and 4. So if you've got any wine to finish,
So while people are answering this, should I have a little chit chat about what we're doing next?
well, actually, Dan, do you want to click on through and we'll find out what the result is? Because that was. Oh, only one person's managed to enter, so that's a bit of a shame. Don't know quite what's happened there. Sorry about that.
Can we launch it again?
Well, pop it into the chat if you want to put your guesses
Pop
in.
it into the chat.
I think the answer is a lot, but apparently you need an actual number. But I said a lot, which I think technically is correct.
A lot.
But
yeah,
a lot.
Indeed.
That's
Well,
fine.
they are fairly substantial. Was it just for the head, or were you taking into account
Those
the whole
things are-
body?
those things are
I was
massive.
taking into account the whole body. But anyway, so let's get wine 3, which is the pace, and wine 4 into the glass. Would you like to do the honours this time?
I'll do the honours, yeah.
Chef. So, as we get global, and we go to different places, and especially in the New World is people go, oh, they bought this from here, and this came, and this happened as the world moved around the world, but a lot of places have their own unique grapes that are only found in these countries. So we've got one of them. We've got the Pais from the Torres family, and then we're doing the international grapes. So these grapes that have moved around and all that kind of stuff. So wine number 4 is a Merlot, which we all know and love, unless your name is Miles. And then you may not love it quite so much. That's your sideways.
He's finally
joke
what
for the day.
sideways is
He's
after
not- he's not
however
keen.
many years.
Yeah, and it, yeah,
Was it worth the wait?
He didn't like Miles.
no, no, it wasn't. But
I like Miles's wine collection.
Yeah.
I would
remember
drink with Miles. Wouldn't
Yeah.
listen to him. I drink when he's drinking.
Cheval Blanc out of a little paper cup. Could do that.
Classy.
For those of you who don't know what we're on about, we're talking about a film called Sideways, which came out about in
2004.
2004.
2004.
Right, sorry, I did say 3 and 4,
Yeah.
didn't I? Sorry, I'll do the other one. So this is the line that we're going to drink 2 wines side by side. That the wines, it's not about one being better than the other, or one being greater, one being this, or preferring one or the other. They're 2 vastly different wines. But what we thought we could do while we were drinking these is just kind of talk a little bit about what being indigenous means, and wines that kind of come from far and wide, and what that means on a global scale for things, because there's been lots of places in the world that have had their indigenous varietals and then decided to kind of pull them up and plant other things because they thought they could make more money from growing other bits and pieces. But this is maybe a little bit geeky on this one, but I'll probably hand this on to Mr. Taylor about this. What's really interesting about Chile is a lot of the grapes there are on their own rootstock.
Indeed.
Why is that important, and why is that interesting in 43.5 seconds, not for the next 7.5
Well,
years?
we did cover it in the intro video, which is good, but basically all of the vineyards throughout most of the world got completely destroyed by this horrible, nasty little bug, which burrowed into the roots of the plant and killed them. And so it was, and that's called phylloxera. But the soil is just too dry. It just can't cope with it. So you get places like the Canary Islands, Lanzarote. And so what you're tasting is a wine that's come from 2 different vines. One which is the original European vine, Vitis vinifera. We say no jargon, so I'm not going to bother. No, but the other one is a blend of a cross of lots of different rupestris and all sorts of other ones. But you choose these different roots for your different soil. Like some will be really vigorous, some will take up lots of nutrients and water, and some won't. And you're never actually tasting just that pure Cabernet Sauvignon or pure Merlot. You're tasting a mixture of these things, influences from both sides. So this is cool that you get to taste how it used to taste before phylloxera, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That was longer than 43 seconds.
It was.
It was, but if I tell you 43 seconds, we might get under 5 minutes. If I give you 5 minutes, it'll take half an hour. So
Yeah.
I learn these things. So we've got the Pais, which is the indigenous grape, which is there anywhere else in the world growing Pais that
So-
we really know about? Because I know
Pais-
it's got a couple of other synonyms, doesn't it?
It has. So Pais is really interesting because I'm a nerd. So the grapevine arrived in South America in 1493 with Columbus. It arrived in Chile in 1548 with a guy called Francisco de Carabantes, and it's suspected that he mainly brought with him Spanish rice. So there's a lot of Moscatel. But Pais, there's a grape that grows in Tenerife called Listan Prieto, and it still grows in a couple of places in Spain. And there's this really wonderful piece of history where Columbus, on his second mission to what is South America, kind of stopped at Tenerife, loaded up with supplies, and went to South America. And he took with him Listan Prieto. It was taken on the ship. Now, because of the way the grapevine grows, as you will both know, that if you plant a vine and come back in 100 years, it's not the same. It's not the same genetic material. It's advanced and developed. It develops at an incredible rate. So this grapevine arrived in the Americas, so in North America, and they planted Listan Prieto, and then they left it alone. And they have this grape variety in California called Mision, which is from the same genetic material. Down in Argentina, they have a grape that they call Criolla, sometimes Criolla Chica. And in Chile, they've got Pais. They all come from the same original genetic material, but they're all technically different. They're not. If you took a Pais and planted it next to a Listan Prieto, next to a Criollo, why you'd do that, I don't know. If you're doing that, you've got way too much time on your hands. Seriously, you need to have a word with yourself. But if you did that, you'd have 3 very different grapes, very different looking, and 3 very different wines. So it's fair to say that like Pais in Chile it's Pais, it's nobody else. You've got Listan Prieto, that's something slightly different. It's a bit like saying, I'm related to my dad, I'm from the same genetic material, but I'm not him.
It's morphing like
that.
COVID variants at the moment.
But it's infinitely more exciting.
And much more pleasant.
It is.
Yes,
it is indeed. But that sort of piece of history.
I'd like to be tested for how much Pais is in my system on a daily basis, though.
I would like to think quite a bit.
But, guys, before we deep dive too much into these 2 wines, and we'll pull up the tasting notes, and hopefully that will work as well, so that you guys can do that too. But before we do that, we actually have a new feature, because we can find the wine world goes a little bit too far sometimes with their tasting notes, particularly, when it comes to describing a very, very expensive wine.
Wheelbarrow full of
Indeed.
What, wet cut grass on a Tuesday afternoon in March?
Precisely.
Wednesday.
All of these kind of things. So we've
Wednesday
been
is
working...
not better. Wednesday's hump day. It's not good. It's a root
Wednesday.
day. What's wrong with you?
Wednesday.
Anyway, back to Mr.
Shut
Taylor.
up.
My
Right,
apologies.
We've been working with some wonderful people who are called Fake Booze, which is a bit like the Onion of wine news, and they're really, really great fun. And they've been collecting atrocious examples of Ponzi wine tasting things. And what we thought would be the best thing to do would be
Was for me to read one out.
to get somebody to read them out. But we couldn't get Jamie. He was too busy with putting bags
Receiving
into
awards,
boxes
wasn't
and
he?
receiving awards
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So we asked the next best person, which was a celebrity. And let's find out how they had to deal with this.
Oh, hello there. It's Angelos Epithemiou here, and I'm urging you there at the wine club to try some beautiful little cheeky wines. Maybe I can give some descriptions for you. Diamond bright, frost catching the earliest light, still life pewter, tension already with writ in sermons of flinty stone. Is that Blue Nun? Peach kernel, mid-morning honeysuckle orchard fruit, just harvested, crushed almond and soft spice. Lovely. A flirtatious cadenza, hints of exotic fruit and even lightly buttered toast, hinting at the path we should follow. Footfalls echoing in the memory down the passage into the walled vineyard. 98 points. Enjoy them, whatever they are. They sound awful.
Well, and for those of you who don't remember Shooting Stars from the 90s and the early 2000s, we apologise. But I have to say, Angelos Epithemiou looked an awful lot like Jamie did before he had his haircut. So thank you, Barber. Yesterday, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, if you go back and you watch the last 6 months of Online Wine Tasting Club on a YouTube channel, you can see my growth not only in character but in hair.
And white hair in particular. That wine being described was a Krug, wasn't it? Which is a very expensive champagne, but rather good. It's
all
champagne.
right.
It's
yeah,
okay.
it's all right.
But
If you would
yes,
like to send us any, we'll take it.
yeah, footsteps echoing down the pathways into the walled vineyard. I love it. What a load of
So,
nonsense.
would love to know who you'd like to see read Strange Wine Tasting Notes. Pop it in the chat. We'll see who we can get.
I can possibly.
Or if you know anyone that you would like to
yeah.
see read weird wine tasting notes,
I
that
can
would be
hook
great.
you up with Nelson Mandela. Him and me were like that. So I
Brilliant.
can hook you up
Thank
with
you.
Nelson Mandela to read a tasting
I'll bear that one in mind.
I feel compelled to share one of my favourite awful tasting notes, which was I can't claim it was mine, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would. But it was a colleague of mine.
Just before you jump in, do we want to put up? Have we got tasting notes for this one for the people to put in, or do we not
So,
do that for this one?
Dan, how are we with that?
Dano,
Lock him,
our
Dano.
producer for a day.
No one will get that.
Caroline is at home, hopefully in the chat.
Hopefully in the chat.
I don't know why it's zoomed in, but I will
But
bring
that's-
that up
that
anyway.
looks like Easter Island.
Yeah, just click through a few more slides.
So while you're doing that, I'll tell you about the tasting note.
Yeah,
Which a
you
friend of
tell
mine,
your tasting that, then people can copy it.
he said, this wine has so much acidity, I now know how... I was going to say Lenin. I now know how Trotsky felt when he took an ice pick to the back of the head. I thought that was quite a good tasting note.
Oh, absolutely. This is why we've got Mr. Taylor to walk away and his subduing and...
Look at this. This is all very technical. I'm a wine
Very
merchant.
technical.
I don't
we sit here and
understand
talk
these
about wine and drink it.
buttons.
And we've got all these people who click things.
buttons to press. I'm out. I talk about
So-
grape.
Raspberry, there we go. It's a good solid
There
start.
we go. Coffee.
Oh, Kofifi. Raspberry.
Raspberry. Cheese.
What kind of cheese, may I ask specifically? Because I'm not against cheese as a tasting note, but I need some specific. Like, you know when you've got Edam, right, and you take the... surely you've got a piece of Edam, and it's got the red wax on it, isn't it? And you take that wax off, and then you... Like the inside of the wax? Have you...
Oh, yeah.
Like you
I'm-
both, surely...
yeah.
No, I'm
No?
much classier than that. I do that with Baby Bells.
Oh, skills.
Yeah,
It takes me back to childhood. Right?
That's
I like the
what
chocolate.
And they bounce.
That's what I got an award for.
Chocolate I like on this. This is a
Chocolate I like on this, it's got this nice spice to it, and it's got a lot of power for being a relatively lighter style of wine. I think, wine number 4 is much richer and jammier, but we'll get to that in a moment.
Pice is quite interesting. So
Volcanic, legless. It'll get me legless.
wasn't he in
Happy
Lord of the
days.
Rings? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the canon, but Pice is really interesting because it's actually quite a thick-skinned variety, but it doesn't naturally present a lot of colour. But unless you're sort of really careful with it, it can be really tannic, a bit like something we think of Nebbiolo and Barolo. Yeah. So it's a really weird variety, and they tend to grow up pergolas and grow it up. There's a producer I know in Chile who grows it like right up trees. So to harvest, you've got to climb up ladders to get it. It's a mad variety. It's crazy, but you can do all sorts with it.
So pergolas for Mr. Techie over here. Basically, it's like a canopy above your head. They do a lot of that in Spain, in Galicia. For
Yes, they do,
Alvarinho.
yeah.
It's up above your head. Just gonna reach up for the
so
low
Do you
hanging
like that?
fruit.
That's
Southern
Yeah,
Southern European.
Alex can't harvest like that, but I can, so I'm alright.
well, he needs a kickstall. But,
It's a short joke, yay!
I can make it
We-
longer if you like. There we are. But no, some great tasting notes on that. Should we jump into wine number 4 so people can get in there before they've drunk
Yeah,
everything they need to drink?
let's see what wine number 4 is, because these are again vastly different wines. But Merlot, like we say, it's a slightly underrated variety because, well, in that film that I'm not going to go into again, he says I'm not going to drink Merlot, and then he finishes off by drinking, and 100% pretty much, is it 100? Yeah, Merlot.
or near enough. Yeah.
Near enough 100%, which is the dominant blend in Saint-Emilion, which is not a bad kind of wine. Well, at the more expensive end of the market.
But if we just look at these notes that have come in, what's interesting with wine number 3, and we didn't talk very much about the actual wine itself. This is from Miguel Torres, the Torres family, who make wine just about everywhere now, don't they? But they came into Chile in the late 70s. I want to say it was 79 they came in. And they were one of the first international wine brands to start growing in Chile. Well, purchasing in Chile and do their own thing. So they took a big punt and put a lot of money into Chile because they saw that's kind of where it was going. Misogynistic. That's an interesting... Obnoxious.
I've heard wines described in many different ways, but I've genuinely never heard misogynistic as a tasting term.
I've not. But anyway... I'm talking about the wine that's not got the tasting notes up here. Torres, absolutely fantastic, but, big company. But it's what's interesting to see is you'd expect a massive company like that would be the kind of person that comes in and rips it all up and starts again. But they've really gone after keeping the heritage and keeping the style and making what is true to the country. And then, this with Ventus Grey, it's just...
It's fab.
It's fat, it's just really drinkable, it's quaffable, it's rich, it's delightful. And
But when you think about Chilean Merlot, I remember when doing my WSETs, I was presented with a Tesco value Chilean Merlot. And it was exactly what you'd want it to
every
be.
little
It was
helps.
perfectly nice. There was nothing wrong with it at all.
So what?
But no character.
What I think-
this?
Sorry. No,
This
keep interesting.
this has got depth and character to it. And I'm hoping that you might be able to explain why.
What I think Chile does better than any other country is varietal purity. So when I'm sort of teaching about wine, talking about wine, it's not necessarily the entry level. It's not necessarily really expensive either. But if I said, if you want to know what Cabernet Sauvignon really tastes like, get a good example that's not been messed around with oak or anything like that. from Chile because they will, and partly that's it's non-grafted stuff like that. Excuse me, but sort of that history of Merlot in Chile is quite interesting. So Chile traditionally grew Spanish grape varieties. War of Independence, 1810 to 1826. After that, the sort of Chileans went, oh hey, we can make wine here. We need some external influence or inspiration. Let's not look to Spain because we've just got rid of the Spanish. So they looked to France because at the time, France was considered the best wine producing country in the world. So they started importing in 1830 a guy called Claudio Gay. Didn't really take. 1851 a guy called Silvestre Ochagavia Echazarreta brought in Cab Sauv, Merlot,
He hasn't got notes.
Semillon,
This is in that head.
Pinot Noir, but he didn't bring in Chardonnay. So he was ABC before it was cool. So good man. That's when Merlot took off, and I just think where this is from and what Ventisquero aren't doing is they're not catering to like real entry level wine. So like you said, the Tesco Value one, that's real entry level juice. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not suggesting there is. Just save your tedious exchange of emails. It's just this is an entry level wine. This is slightly higher than that, so it's pitching at a slightly different sort of step up by one. And by doing that, so the history of Chile traditionally was volume production, planting on the slopes, high yields, very easy. And it wasn't until the 80s with the advent of people like Torres who said, you see there's hills there, let's go and plant on those. And everybody went, oh, that's a lot harder, isn't it? Yes, but the quality is better. Yeah. And that's where that divergence happened kind of in the 80s.
Well, that's where you see, you say with Ventisquero, they have their kind of reserve level, then they have, their step up to their Glacier, their grey level, and then they've got their Herus, their Pangias, those kind of things. So they make a bottle of wine that runs anywhere from 7 or 8 quid, sub 10 quid a bottle, to 30, 40 quid a bottle. Yeah. And it depends, and I think that's the thing with wine, like value isn't about being cheap.
No, it's not.
Value is about drinking, A, what you have the budget for, and B, that you think is good value for money. If I turn around and go, hey, this bottle of wine's 20 quid, and you drink, oh, that's amazing. I go, oh, actually, it's only 12. You go, wow, that's amazing value for money. But on the other hand, if I go, this wine's 12 quid, it's okay, actually, it's 20. Thanks. And that's where value is. And we can drink just solid, everyday drinking wine for a very, very low price. And we don't have to be jumping into 30, 50, 60, 100 quid bottles of wine to have a good bottle of wine. I think that's hugely important.
Or any of those Santamilion Grand Crus.
And, it's the same with anything in any walk of life. It depends what you're into and what you're excited about and things like that. You talk about beer. Is Budweiser or Carlsberg the best beer on the planet? Maybe not. But on a warm summer's day and if there's nothing else around, it does the job. Cool. And you can have a case of that for the same price as 2 bottles of some ridiculous crafty-esque kind of thing.
You'll be surprised, but you find an awful lot of winemakers at vintage time, at harvest time, they will drink an awful lot of just cheap beer. And you'd think, they'd be drinking all of this wine. No, they're very happy with the beer at the end of a very hard day.
Having done a little bit of, harvests in various places around the world and sort of a little bit of winemaking, there's a saying which I'm sure most people know is that, it takes a lot of beer to make good wine, doesn't it?
It's true.
But, yeah, I couldn't agree with the value thing more.
So. Absolutely. So we've talked about truly indigenous varietals.
Yep.
We've talked about truly global varietals.
Yeah.
But what if we could do something that kind of bridged the gap? And I think with wine number 5, that's what we can do. So this is a Carmenere. So let's get this in the glass. After doing the last couple of months with everything being a screw cap, it's kind of I've forgotten how to open a bottle of wine.
Did you say this is a Carmenere?
This is a Carmenere.
Why don't you Carmenere and say that? Thank you. Drops mic. I'll go.
Did we not say one joke?
Dear
oh, sorry. Yeah.
He's not back.
The only other one I was going to say was we can't Carignan like this.
Oh, well,
so
you'll hear a bit about Carignan in the interview unless Jamie's cut it all out. But we did have a chance to sit down and talk to the head winemaker and head vineyard manager, Arnaud, at this one, and I'm going to have to brace myself to try to pronounce it. Erdfiel, which is a classic Southern American Spanish name, isn't it?
Yeah, very indigenous name. In fact, goes back.
There is
definitely not Hispanic name.
There is no way that is South American.
We're running out of time.
Okay, video. Let's go to the
we have a little video and an interview with these guys, so I'm going to pop it on. Let's just stop these guys making bad jokes.
Wine number 5 comes from Dan Erdfjell, best known for building ships. Big ships. Now, you may not think that maritime engineering in Norway and growing grapes in South America had that much in common. And, well, you'd be right. However, he made the jump, and now owns more than 110 hectares of beautiful vineyards, all farmed organically and biodynamically. In common with some of the most prized vineyards in the world, much of the work is done by horses, which are of course more gentle on the soil than tractors. In fact, Dan specially brought over Norwegian fjord horses to Chile just for this project. Their winery too is both beautiful and clever. Designed by Dan's son Lawrence, it uses gravity to make the wine rather than having to pump it around between tanks. We had to find out more, so spoke to Arnaud, the head of winemaking and vineyard management, to dig deeper into this fascinating story. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
We are owned by Norwegian people, and Dan Odfjell was telling me that in Norway, 60% of all the wine are purchased in bag-in-box, because I mean the technology today make the wine. I mean it stays very well in the bag-in-box. It's easier to move. You can, open just a glass when you're cooking and stuff, and it's much better. So no, I think it's good, very good.
Should we start by talking a little bit about your winery and how a shipbuilding magnate gets into owning a corner of the Central Valley?
Apparently there is a story of a woman. You know there is always woman or love in. And apparently there were a woman involved, but basically, so he bought that place a long time ago, and we start planting in '92. He had that farm for a long time, and he was losing a lot of money. He had fruit, pigs and stuff, and. Well, we are not making a lot of money. So he used to say, if I have to lose money, I prefer to lose money with style, making wine. So here we are. Look, there is in Chile, there is a before and after Odfjell Vineyard as a building. It's the first winery in South America that has that Napa Sonoma style, modern architecture concept, and it was the first gravity flow winery in South America. So Odfjell Vineyard is known first of all for that. I'm here since '97, so I finished building the winery with Lawrence, and today we are organic, biodynamic, vegan, sustainable. I mean, we're really into you can say into the certification, but into the taking care of the planet.
We just want to know what you love about this wine, and why growing Carmenere in Chile makes it better than growing it, or not even better, different to anywhere else in the world that's making it. But I think this is a great drop of juice.
The Carmenere, it's funny, the Carmenere, well, you know the story and everything, but the Carmenere, I remember when I arrived in Chile, we were really afraid about all the herbal, vegetal aspect of the Carmenere. And since the US were our main market, we tried to get rid of that. And the easier solution of getting of the flavor was to harvest late. I remember here in Palo Hurtado, we used to harvest our Carmenere around the 15th of May, even later. But we got these wine that were over mature. It could be Merlot, could be Cabernet Sauvignon, could be anything. It didn't have any personality. And we sold a lot in the US, but it was boring in a way, because you needed to put something else into the wine to bring flavor, like oak. And since, in our case, in other winery also, we want to to manage the oak in a different way, we start to say, well, okay, what happened? I mean, everybody say you can't harvest earlier a Carmenere, but what if? So we start to harvest earlier, and yes, you get much more vegetal and floral flavor. But these flavors are very, if you go into the winemaking aspect, are very reactive. I mean, they are like thiol in Sauvignon Blanc. You can burn them very quickly with oxygen. So, get rid of the vegetal aspect and just emphasize the wine in a pure fruit aspect coming from the vegetal.
Because this wine has a great colour. It's a really deep, dark colour, and I think that's just a really notable thing. On the tasting notes, like you're saying, it's still got that herbal, vegetal character that's coming across. I'm really getting the green pepper, but not in an it can be too much, can't it, on some Cabernets and things like this. But this is really well balanced, and it has that fruit to counteract it. And I think it's
color is never a problem in Chile. You always have anthocyane, you always have color. It's complicated sometimes to keep them, so you need to have some amount of tannin or acidity to be able to keep it. But it's important, I think, especially on wine, to be able to have a glass of wine and not get tired. And to do that, you need acidity. And that's why it's also important to harvest the Carmenère earlier, because otherwise you get that over mature and low acidity that make it tiring. When you have a wine like that, it's fresh, it has fruit, the anise side make it even fresher. You don't get tired, and I think it's important. Wine is for pleasure, and I don't like when people are trying to scare customers, saying, the wine, wine is pleasure, it's to enjoy, and sometimes you need wine. You open it, you smell things that are pleasant, even if you're not able to say this is smell a rose in a spring morning at 6 a.m. No, it doesn't matter. You're just enjoying the wine. It's easy. And I mean that's what it is. In the right way, not the way you say, but that's what it is in a good way.
This is our philosophy as well.
I completely agree with you. I must have done 400 tastings since lockdown, and people ask how I taste. I'm like, and it's not about saying it's like wet cut grass on a Tuesday afternoon in March. Nobody cares about this. It's a bit lemony, a bit peachy, and the big question is, do you like it? And if you like it, maybe we can help you pick out what those flavors are that you do like. If you don't like it, same thing. But open it, enjoy it. The best glass of wine you ever had shouldn't be the 1961 Obrek. No one cares about it. It should be, I was with so-and-so, we opened this up and we had this experience and the wine was great. And that's what's important.
There is something that everybody say when they are visiting Oldfield. First of all, we have a horse here. They can make, with fjord horses, the beautiful horses. And the other things is we have wine, we are ready to open a beer, discuss, we are transparent, we're not going to bullshit. I mean, we're going to say the things the way they are. And it's fun because people start to, even during the tasting, we're not going to say, there is a hole in the bottle, it means, no, that's bullshit. We destroying meat. And it's fun because people are starting to understand that, just enjoy the experience, enjoy the wine. And wine is a way to talk to people and, start a conversation and no, they will be welcome and they will remind the visit at the end.
Fantastic. Well, we're certainly going to remember this. I think we've got a great wine to give to people. I hope we find some great new fans of your wines, and we certainly would love to come and meet you and have that beer one day when we can.
When we're allowed to. No, It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. It's been enlightening and really.
Thank you very much.
So, I'm glad.
He's a cool guy.
Well, I say he's a cool guy, but it seemed that nobody was listening and everyone wanted to make comments about my haircut.
You can see what
Oh,
I'm saying
was that
about
you?
Angelos.
Exactly.
Oh, right.
Lee, I don't think you're in a particular place to lecture people about hairs. at the
Hey,
moment,
this is a
though.
proud, luscious mane that I've cultivated.
Absolutely, yes.
Cultivated, I like that.
But this is a pretty crazy wine, isn't it? I appreciate we're slightly running over, so we'll try to be as quick as possible. And anyone who doesn't, but look, it's we're very interested to hear what you guys have had to say. Hopefully, some of you have been entering your tasting notes on the Poly V thing. Oh yeah, I can see
We've
some
got
coming
woody,
up.
herbal, blackcurrant, petrol, fruity.
Woody, anise toast.
Oh,
That's a very specific type of toast.
Love,
Anise
love,
toast.
love plums.
Well, they are my favourite kind of plums, to be honest.
It's the only
But,
plum you should have.
I think so.
So there's kudos in the chat to Deborah Fleming for apparently being the first person to pick anise. So congratulations
Yeah.
on that.
I was thinking this
fruit
really
lozenges.
reminds me of the aniseed balls that you got in a tuck shop when you were a kid, and that says a lot about me.
No, absolutely, and it has got that vegetal thing, and this could almost be kind of like a love-hate kind of wine because it has that. But this is what Carmenere should be.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is Arnaud was hilarious, absolutely hilarious, and we had an hour with him, and obviously we had to try and cut it down to about 7 minutes. But
Very hard.
when I get a chance to play it on the editing machine, I will get it edited. I will get it up on the website. I'm not going to give you a day for it because then people will go, "Where's the interview?" But hopefully early next week we'll get it up on the YouTube channel so you can see the whole interview with him because he was hilarious and just told it how it was, which is absolutely phenomenal.
We appreciate that from
Which
people
is
as
great
well.
because that's what's exciting about wine. So we will get that done.
No idea what Becharovka is, but probably a swear
some
word.
banging tasting notes there.
Really good.
Everything
I like the
reading,
big smiley
genius.
face. That's
big
I like that.
It's good.
I like the peppery thing because Carmenère's high. You'll like this one. Carmenère's quite high in methoxypyrazines. Thank you very much. And the problem with it is
no one put that as a tasting note.
and neither should they either because it's really pretentious. I read it on Wikipedia basically, but you've got to ripen Carmenère enough to kind of. If you don't ripen it enough, it's too green and too stalky. But if you over ripen it, it's just alcohol. So it's a really fine balance to get right, and I think they've done that here. It's wonderful.
There's some great notes.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is let's put up the polls for pick your favourite wines of the night. Let's
let's do that.
Let's
That's
see
great
what
idea.
people like. Let's pick your favourite. Is it favourite white, favourite red, and then favourite overall?
It
Is
goes
that what
favourite
you've done?
white, favourite red, favourite overall. Have you had a good time?
Okay, so let's dive in that.
Pop
If,
into
if,
that.
if you've not had a good time, just don't answer that one. That'd be great.
Yeah, just keep quiet.
fantastic. Yeah, when nobody needs to know.
Yeah,
They do.
but I mean, so which is your favourite of these three reds? Because I don't know where I would go because they're so different.
I'm torn because each wine would be different for a different thing. You know, if I was just drinking, I'd take the Merlot. Food wise, I think I'm more drawn to the Pais, and for like interesting, like for a weird quirky wine, the Carmenere is something that I'd want to share with people to go, let's try something different.
Yeah.
So that's me beating around the bush without putting my hat on anything. You're welcome, Lee. You beat that.
No, I can't. I can't to be honest because my answer would be exactly the same, and I would have said that if you'd asked me first. I really like the Pais because Pais is there's a lot of variation in Pais, and I've had a lot of Pais where you just go, oh, it's dreadful. So normally, if you'd asked me beforehand, I probably would have gone Carmenere because I love it. I like that big, full-bodied, rich, ripe style that this is. But actually, the Pais for me, just because it's interesting, it's versatile, and it's a little bit different to a lot of other Pais out there. Boom.
Boom.
It's a good answer. I think for me, I actually think that my favourite is the Carmenere. I would never have said that because some I've tried are too green. It's like when you bite into a green pepper, isn't it? It's just they are.
Who does that?
Well,
You just walking around.
He didn't
Wait,
have
Joe.
toys as a child. Is that there?
That's okay. What do all these green lines on the screen?
so these are people's progress as they go through the 4 questions.
This is like the Matrix.
That's just very clever. It is like watching the Matrix, isn't
Okay,
it?
so
And
while we're letting people
finishing
progress,
Yeah.
should we? Well, the winners. There's no winners because it's just the answers.
Everyone's
Oh, you should tell, yeah.
250 barrels would be needed to keep the Easter Island heads happy.
250
That's a lot of
barrels.
That's a lot of wine. 300 bottles a barrel.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
It's a
wine.
lot of booze.
wine.
But they are fairly substantial, big, massive heads, aren't they?
They are. I know, and Alex will demo this. We've been promising you for a long time that we were going to get new packaging, sort packaging, make packaging better. And believe it or not, the hardest thing of running a online wine show is cardboard boxes. But it is finally here. In
It
its
is.
in
This
its
is
final
not
thing.
in its final form.
We're
though.
waiting for them to print it to make it pretty on the outside. But starting next month, not only will we have more wines,
Yeah.
6 wines, not only will there be more wine in each pack, 75ml instead of 62.5ml, it will
Indeed.
come in this beautiful solid corrugated box. So fingers crossed, and I'm not promising anything because I can't promise anything until it's all there. It should not be able to get beaten up in the post quite as badly as some of them have been done. So we've got some different trials happening this week just to make sure that everything is as it should be. But when you join us next month, we will be having
We will.
6 wines for
South Africa.
So South
Oh,
Africa
lekker.
is next
Much
month.
lekker.
Lots
Love
of
it.
lots of fun
Love it
stuff
greatly.
going on with that. So, so what do we got going on? We're doing Eastern Europe next week for our Adventures series. So if anyone's on both tastings, that's great. We've still got tomorrow if you want to dive in and get it. If you've not got
Yeah.
it, 6
We don't have Tatiana. Unfortunately, she's unable to join us. What we do have
is
is
a 6th wine.
wines.
We've got
And
a bonus wine in.
I've
and me.
convinced Jamie to put in an orange one, because if you're not going to do an orange wine from Eastern Europe, where are you going to do one? So it's not Jamie's favourite thing. I think they're quite cool, but it's up to you. I think we should give people one to taste, and we are. So that's what's happening.
So there's the option on this. And what else is going on? What else is going on? So we've got South Africa coming, we've got Eastern Europe coming. Have we got what people like?
We
for
have the
evening?
favourite white wine here.
Okay, so favourite white wine
It is wine 1.
Look at that, Claude. Oh,
Wow, by quite some margin, about 4-1. 40 points to the Clos de Lolol and 9 to the... And that's, I think, wine 2 is a more divisive wine, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yep.
So have we got?
That's very cool.
Have we got answers for anything else?
We can click through to the... Next slide, please.
Next, lovely.
I'm basically
how
Chris
do we do-
Whitty.
How do we do on the Reds?
Ooh,
You can read.
I can't read. So it's a tie between 3 and 4, 12 points to each. But the Carmenere, 25
that, 25
points.
points.
Absolute.
Banked it.
That is a spanking.
Okay,
Very
before
good.
before it flicks, best one of the night.
What do we think?
Go. Not we. You.
Oh,
Go.
right, okay. I'm going to say the Carmenere.
I'm going to say wine 1.
Ooh.
The Lolo.
Wow, wine of the night. Yeah, lol.
But bear in mind,
Oh, I can't
what
say that. You said
sometimes
that.
happens-
can.
Pice, pice.
Pice, yeah, exactly.
Pice.
What sometimes
Give me a
happens-
pice of it.
Oh, producer, what's your call?
Favourite wine? 5.
Five.
Wine 5.
Give me give me a
Decide.
pice of the action.
Here we go.
Whoop.
It's wine 5. It's wine 5.
Wine
five.
22.
That.
You
But
go
again,
and
some...
save the best for last.
Brilliant. Well, I hope
Yeah,
you've
so
enjoyed that.
What
That
we're
was...
what we're
good.
going to do?
No, do you know what? We've also got one last, which is have... Oh, it's done it again. Just right-click the mouse.
Just right-click the mouse.
And
anyway,
then click through to the next one, because
so-
we want to find out if people had a good time. That's what we like to see. Fantastic.
That's 100%.
And that's
I
considering
like
I
that.
was here. That's.
Well, they just listen to me say if you don't have a good time, ignore it. So that's good.
I've never hit those numbers.
Only one person voted.
Yeah.
And it was me.
Anyway, so
There is one other tasting which
we
we've
have
got coming
one
up.
very, very cool tasting. We are doing a joint tasting for those of you who may or may not know the wine show on Amazon.
Yeah, they used to be on Channel 5. They've
They're
now
on Channel
moved
5,
to
Amazon,
Amazon
worldwide,
Prime.
whatever. We are doing a joint tasting. They did a phenomenal series on Portugal.
Yeah.
And so what we are doing is we are doing a taste the show tasting. So we are going to pack up their wines and some of their favourite wines from
Yeah.
the show, and we're going to do a show kind of like this. And you've got me and Alex, unfortunately, you've got to deal with us.
Yep.
But we've also got Joe Fattorini from the wine show joining us live to talk
Yeah.
through the wine. So it's going to be like this, you know, in the studio, Joe joining us, you know, highlights from the wine show, little videos, all that kind of stuff. So that
Their video production budget's a bit higher than ours, I think it's fair to say. They've got some stunning.
Spent money on.
Well, indeed, yeah.
just
not
you.
much.
Sorry if the video content was crap.
I
We spent
wasn't.
all the money on Lee.
I wasn't worth it. The VT content
But,
is.
We can give you a
anyway,
bit of a taster, can't
Yeah,
we?
rather than talking about it, let's have a little look about what's coming up. Then we'll come back for any final questions, and then we'll let you enjoy your evening.
Welcome to the wine show.
Thanks.
So, it wouldn't be the online wine tasting club without a bit of a song.
This is true, but we should introduce, because Lee, who, if you go onto Twitter or Instagram, you will find that he is probably, arguably, the best person making wine-related songs on the internet. So we felt we had to have a bit of a sing-along, but we hope you've had a great time. Oh, should we have the prices very quickly before we do that? So just to show you that the favourite wine of the night was the cheapest. So there you go. So if you want to pick up some of that and talk to your friends about it and tell them the cool stories, now that you can meet up in a garden, go and grab some Urgefiel Carmenere from our website, and we hope that you really enjoy that. They are delicious wines. They're all great value for money, and let's
Sing a song.
Don't
Yeah.
do me.
feel free to tune out now at this
I
stage. if you
apologise in
want to.
advance.
Baby, I don't really wanna know how your vineyard grows, 'cause I just wanna drink. Lately, did you ever try the pints in the Chilean rain as it thrills you to the bone? Or maybe I just want the wine, I wanna drink it, don't wanna spit. Maybe Marlowe needs to breathe. In Chile I still believe. Maybe you're the same as me. We'll taste wines they never knew. You and I are gonna drink forever. I said maybe I don't really wanna know that your chocolate thrice, 'cause I just wanna drink. Lately, did you Sauvignon? If we had a camera as it chills you to the bone, maybe I will always drink all the Chilean wines. I think now is not the time to fly. Just give Chile a try. I think you're the same as me. We taste wines we never knew, and you and I are gonna drink forever. Gonna drink forever. Gonna drink forever. And that's
Well,
enough of that
That's
silly
enough of that
nonsense.
silly nonsense. Let's roll credits. Good night.
Good night.
Right, cheers.